Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Vickers, and thanks to the Honourable Member for Harrow East for leading today's debate. And as always, it's a great range of issues that we discuss, and it's a really, really interesting debate, and I certainly learn a lot. And it's certainly quite good to see the pre-recess adjournment debate on tour here in Westminster Hall, although I do hope that we get back into the main chamber afterwards. If I can, I'd like to start with the apology, a short apology to the pupils at Caldecott High School. I'd originally due to be with them this afternoon for their Easter Back to the 1980s musical, which was a decade in which I misspent my youth. I'm really sorry to miss it, so my good luck to them. And to follow on that theme, I know the party opposite is often keen to turn the clock back to the 1980s too, but I am very proud to represent a party which looks to the future under the leadership of my right honourable friend, the member for Holborn and St Pancras, whether it be on making our streets safer, whether it be on kickstarting a green industrial strategy with support for things like steel, which is very important in my constituency, or breaking down the barriers to opportunity at every stage and working for sustained growth in the G7. It's, I think, a confident vision for the modernisation of our economy, our public services, to prepare Britain for the years ahead. Speaking of looking ahead, I know many of us will be looking ahead to Easter, including the congregations of churches and the chapels in my constituency in Newport East, who will be gathering to celebrate at the most important time of the Christian calendar. And I want to put on record my thanks to the Christian congregations across my constituency for all they do. And in doing so, praise the Honourable Member for Congleton for all her work. And I know there was a previous debate this afternoon on this, on her contribution as envoy for freedom of religious beliefs. She made and she raised some very important cases today. It was fascinating and valuable to hear about her work, and I hope the Truro review points are taken up by the Minister. Last weekend I hosted a surgery at St Julians Methodist Church, which is one of several churches running warm hubs in my constituency. I was offering people the chance to stay warm, and these kind of initiatives run by volunteers typify the way our churches continue to offer people help and hope and a helping hand during worrying times, as the Honourable Member said, from Glasgow South during a cost of living crisis, where a whole host of initiatives across our communities, as well as campaigning on behalf of vulnerable and persecuted people across the world, including the many persecuted Christians in Africa and Asia, who will be unable to worship in freedom this Easter. I just want to highlight one project before referring to other people's speeches, the Sanctuary Project based at Bethel Community Church in the constituency of my neighbour, the Honourable Friend for Newport West, who wasn't here today but would have probably been in that debate before, and is another example of this kind of community work. Sanctuary, which is run by the brilliant Mark Seymour and Sarah Croft, offers practical support, advocacy and friendships to refugees and asylum seekers in Newport. And I met with the team last week with one of the Afghan interpreters who has settled in Newport, and we've had a community for quite some while now. And the interpreter outlined to me just how many brave interpreters who worked with the MOD and have been accepted in the hour are still waiting in UK-sourced accommodation all these months on now in Pakistan, awaiting those entry clearance visas, which can only be issued by the Home Office, with no income or right to work in Pakistan. Some are resorting to these treacherous small boats journeys we've talked of so much to claim asylum in the UK in the hope of kind of having a quicker journey. And the same is true for some former Afghan military personnel who were trained by and work with the UK forces. And it's really in the UK's moral and security interest to address this dire situation 18 months on. Volunteers at the Sanctuary Project are dismayed by the illegal migration bill, and I've also had lots of letters this week from Year 5 pupils from Liswerry Primary in Newport who are fundraising for the Sanctuary project and wrote to me about the bill. And it was really disappointing that the government voted down the amendments to the bill this week, including the amendments on improving support for victims of modern slavery, removing the Home Secretary's power to detain and remove unaccompanied children, and the creation of new National Crime Agency unit to crack down on the smuggler gangs. And I do hope when we come back to it at remaining stages, the government will think again. End of term, as the Honourable Member for Harrow East mentioned, the response times, and end of term presents an opportunity to look at the government to reflect on its responsiveness to honourable members, whether it's in the form of oral or written questions or correspondence to ministers and the hotlines that we all use and are staffed so well. And I've raised the issue of responsiveness in previous adjournment debates as Deputy Shadow Leader. And whilst there has been some improvement in some departments, notably the Department of Health and Social Care, which picked up in 2022 after a pretty dismal record in 21, we know that there are still others lagging behind or not disclosing up-to-date information on how quickly they respond to inquiries and questions from MPs. The Home Office is one prominent example, but there's so many departments, including the DWP, MOJ and DEFRA, who say they're committed to increasing response times, and even that they're undertaking regular training by the Parliamentary Capability Team, but won't provide up-to-date information on responsiveness to us. And we're a few months too late for New Year's resolutions, but a commitment to greater government transparency going forward would be most welcome. The Honourable Member for Glasgow South West mentioned that away from the workings of Westminster, I'm sure we'll all be aware that people up and down the country are still experiencing a very real cost of living crisis, and he was quite right to quote that figure by the Resolution Foundation that people are £11,000 worth off since 2010, and that we highlight that. It's always difficult to pull together these full range of contributions, the full range of contributions today, but I did want to say to the Honourable Member for Harrow East, as the Honourable Member mentioned earlier, it was he did indeed live up to the record of the late and great, wonderful Sir David Amos in this debate. And he talked about the excellent facilities in Harrow, but also about antisocial behaviour, which allows me the opportunity to say building up really good neighbourhood policing teams, which is a Labour promise in the next general election, is very, very important. My force was cut by 40% since 2010, and Operation Uplift is just bringing us up to where we were possibly when we were cut, so it's really important we do that. And the Honourable Member for Harrow East also represents a very diverse community, and it's always interesting to hear a range of issues, not least the suggestion of a GCSE in Romanian. And the Honourable Member for Hackney South and Shoreditch spoke of the tragic case of Rasan and love to his family and the need to learn lessons in the record keeping. I really hope that particular issue for Rasan's mother is taken up by the Minister in the closing remarks, and the awful case of the historic discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, which is obviously completely unacceptable. She does a good service to her constituents in raising this today, and also in raising the issue of housing, as was mentioned by my honourable friend for Reading East, who gave a really compelling case for an arts-based solution for using Reading Jail. It's an excellent idea. I wish him well with that campaign, and it reflects the importance of preserving the significance of our historic buildings. For instance, in Newport, we have the Westgate Hotel, home of the 1839 Chartist uprising, where our Chartists fought for democracy, and I think we all share that view of saving those really important buildings. And the Honourable Member for Bosworth, of whom I've been to his drop-ins on body image, and I'm most grateful for him for the work that he does, not least as the parent of 2 teenage children who use social media. And I think he does a great service there, and made some really important comments about TikTok. And there are obviously, there are questions going forward with that, which I'm sure will be heard. And he was indeed the first AI speech, but it was quite amusing for me watching the Honourable Member for Cardiff West, my honourable friend, who'd done precisely the same thing, and in an AI, but the Honourable Member got in first. So I'll just finally say, by wishing everyone across the House and all staff on the estate a very happy Easter. And I know it's a special time for many other traditions too. I recently met with the Kurdish-Turkish community in Newport at New Roz on the weekend, and we celebrated there. The Muslim community is currently observing Ramadan. I'm going to various iftars next week, and the Jewish community soon will be marking Passover. So hope wherever we are, however we're commemorating the days and weeks ahead, we all have a restful but but constructive working recess, and see you all in April.